Hi, and welcome to HUMA Beats and Eats podcast. I'm Marnie Wood, your host, and today I have the extreme pleasure of sitting with the board president of the Decoy Museum at Havre De Grace, Michael Tarquini. We're going to get started. So hi, thank you so much for being here with me. I appreciate it. Please introduce yourself and discuss your role as it pertains to the Decoy Museum.
Again, my name is Mike Tarquini. I'm the president of the board. Our board consists of 11 people, including myself. And my job is to corral the board. With all the input from the board, we map the strategic direction, so to speak, for the museum. On occasion, we find ourselves doing some tactical kind of stuff. None of which we want to do, but we find ourselves having to do some tactical stuff because, you know, like most careers, people come and go, and sometimes you have a vacancy, and I'm sure every nonprofit organization has voids that have to be filled. So rather than complain, we just fill that void, and it puts us in a tactical role once in a while.
What is the museum's vision?
The vision of the museum, you know, the vision kind of ties in with the mission. Our mission, if you will, is to collect, document, preserve, and interpret artifacts that are related to the history of waterfowling and decoy making on the Upper Bay, Lower Susquehanna River. That was the founding mission of the museum. And I'm going to drive that point home a lot, I think, today. We started out as a local museum.
Okay. So what's the...
Local meaning 3 businessmen from Havre De Grace sat around a coffee shop and decided that with all the rich history of waterfowling and decoy making that this area is known for, we needed a museum or a testament to that history. It just so happens that right outside our front door is the famed Susquehanna Flats. Susquehanna Flats is nothing more than a delta of shallow water that is a result of the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay meeting the mouth of the Susquehanna River, the largest freshwater feed to the Chesapeake Bay. So all the silt settles there, and what you had was shallow water. And shallow water gave rise to the sun being able to penetrate that water, and you got rich growth of, call it seaweed, call it subaquatic vegetation, which is exactly what it's called. And so Havre De Grace just happens to be located right along the Atlantic flyway for migrating waterfowl. And the Susquehanna Flats turns out to have been the best restaurant along the flyway for migrating waterfowl.
Wow.
So millions of migrating waterfowl stopped over at the Susquehanna Flats right outside our front door and fed themselves on their way, north or south. And so what naturally emerged was hunting. Okay? Now, at first, hunting was for subsistence. People did it to eat. And then there was a period called market hunting. Market hunting was, because it's illegal now, was people hunting and killing dozens, if not hundreds, of migrating waterfowl, mostly ducks. Just to put a time frame to this, this is in the 19th century. So maybe around 1850s, 60s, you know, going right up to the turn of the century, the hunters would kill large numbers of migrating waterfowl and sell them.
They sell them to restaurants?
At first it was just locally, because you have to think about the time frame I just said. The time frame, they couldn't zip it on a plane and send it somewhere.
They put it on ice.
They put it on a horse and carriage and sent it somewhere. So that limited where you could go with it.
Now, real quick, what kind of waterfowl besides ducks? Like what else?
There were mostly ducks, but today you see a lot of migrating geese. You see swan, you see snow geese. You're not allowed to kill swan. Mostly ducks, and of course there are several species of ducks. Most notably, the canvasback duck, which turns out to be the king of ducks. It is the best table fare of all ducks. So, a very key development in our history was the emergence of the railroads. When the railroads emerged, we could now expand the reach of what got killed on the Susquehanna Flats. A person could have hunted something in the morning, say this morning, on the Susquehanna Flats, packed it in ice, put it on a train, and it could have been served tomorrow night. Could be served tomorrow night in New York City in a restaurant or Point South.
And that was big.
That's a big deal. That turned this into a very large industry with hundreds of ducks being killed and sent elsewhere. It became a market. And so then people who wanted to get into market gunning or market hunting, they all showed up here in this part of the state. And so you had an enormous number of hunters out on that body of water. Now, what was needed for that hunting were decoys. So the communities surrounding the Susquehanna Flat, most notably Havre De Grace, also Charlestown in Cecil County, and Perryville and Northeast also in Cecil County. In Harford County, it was pretty much only Havre De Grace, because we're the only part of Harford County that touches the Susquehanna Flats. Decoy making became one of the largest cottage industries, what people did at home. So dozens of decoy makers emerged. And so our vision, if you will, back to your original question, is to celebrate, document, and preserve and share with future generations. Why is that so important for Havre De Grace? It's important because it's our story to tell. You will not go to Illinois and Chicago and visit a museum who will tell you about hunting the Susquehanna Flats.
Right.
It's our story to tell. So that museum had to be in Havre De Grace.
Yeah.
There's no alternative. I mean, it would not be in a Baltimore museum. Just like Havre De Grace probably wouldn't be a museum for trains.
Right.
Okay? So our vision initially was to be a local museum, but that's changing. And maybe we'll talk about that when we get a little further down the list. It'll make more sense when we get down there. But our vision and mission are actually in flux right now. We're changing in a very positive way. 2026 represents the 40th year of operation of the Havre De Grace Decoy Museum. 40 years is quite a feat for any business, let alone a nonprofit.
And it started in 1986, for those of you who are a little struggling with math.
Yeah, the idea was conceived by these businessmen in 1981. So there was a 5-year period where the idea was nurtured, refined, and then the realization that it takes money to open a museum. And then the first realization was that 3 businessmen didn't know much about decoys.
Can you name the 3 businessmen?
Yeah.
Please?
Alan Fair, local realtor. Alan is currently 92 years old.
Wow.
Mitchell Shank, who was the grandson of R. Madison Mitchell, who was probably the most prolific decoy maker in Havre De Grace's history. And then Donald Asher, who was a local businessman. Donald was a part of an initial conversation, but Mitch Shank and Alan Fair did the heavy lifting. And once they figured out that they needed some technical assistance, let's call it, they engaged Jimmy Pierce, who was a well-known decoy maker in the area. Jimmy started making decoys late 40s, 1948-ish. Jimmy is also 92 years old today. Both Jimmy and Alan are still living, and so is Mitch Shank, although Jimmy and Alan are 92 this year. But still very active in the museum. If we hold an event here today, they'll be here.
Oh, that's awesome. Where did decoy making start? And do you know, like, the history of decoy making itself?
Oh, well, decoy making, believe this or not, is linked all the way back to like 400 BC.
Oh, wow.
Natives of North America. It was found in archaeological digs, I guess. I'm not an archaeologist, but a place in Nevada called the Lovelock cave. They dated very crude decoys back to natives of the area.
Wow.
And they were certainly not carved out of wood and painted with all the paints, because none of that stuff had been developed. But they were weaved with like tule grass and stuff like that. So as early as, I'm not 100% sure about the 400 BC. It is written somewhere. I've recently read it again. But it very early on, it dates way back. And I did not know this until I got involved in the Decoy Museum, but the oldest form of folk art in America is decoy making.
Oh, wow.
It's the oldest. Decoy making is considered, and rightly so, a folk art.
And when did it start here, like with the market?
I think in Havre De Grace,
the market
in the mid-late 19th century, the pioneer of what we'll call the Havre De Grace style was a family called the Holly family, as in holly, like the Christmas bush. John Daddy Holly is given the distinction of being the pioneer of the Havre De Grace style. Surprisingly, after 40 years, just opened a permanent John Daddy Holly exhibit.
Oh, neat.
And you would wonder, how did it take 40 years? But because I wonder that quite often.
These things take time.
Well, it's very simple. Documentation of the past has been lacking from time to time. And I think that's probably true with most things. Usually the stuff that has most written about it is probably not the beginnings.
Right.
The beginnings don't get documented as thoroughly as other parts. Another way to look at this, and I think is more correct. I mean, I wasn't around in the turn of the century, of the 19th.
Yeah, I'm not going to age you.
But I might look it, but I wasn't
No, you
there.
don't.
I think it's fair to say, it's fair to communicate to all that early decoys were hand chopped with a hatchet. An artisan, we'll call them artisans because that's what they were. An artisan would take a block of wood and kind of chop it with a hatchet and shape it. And if you think about what it takes to take a block of wood and make it look like what you see on the shelves of this museum, you could understand why there aren't that many of the early ones around. Because it's not like you made hundreds of them a day.
Right.
You might have made a handful, if you made a handful. Maybe as the 1940s and 50s came about, decoy makers in this region tried to figure out a way to make more. And one of the developments that is attributed to R. Madison Mitchell is he figured out a way to employ a duplicating lathe that was designed to make gun stocks and baseball bats. He figured out a way to have a wheel trace a pattern, ride along a pattern, and then have a saw blade attached to, and that saw blade was cutting the block of wood to look just like the pattern. And with that, you could make hundreds in a day, not a couple.
How much wood does it take to make, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, a block for a duck, for instance, might be 15 inches by 6, block of wood. But back in the early days, they had various sizes of pieces of wood. They didn't go to the sawmill and get this fresh white pine or nice softwood.
I was going to ask
today.
if it's different types of woods or they're wood you can use.
Well, if you think
can't
about
use.
it, when you're hand chopping, you probably aren't making them out of oak, right? Hardwood, you're making them out of softer wood. And white pines, cedar. And then also think about where your destination is for them is in the water.
Right.
So cedar was always a good choice. Initially decoys were designed to lure waterfowl. Today they're designed to lure collectors.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So
See
when
them
you're
on everybody's mantles.
when
and
you're not
everybody's
throwing them in
windows.
the water, it becomes less important that they become cedar and can
Right.
withstand all the the rigorous parts of being in the water for long periods of time. Woods like basswood and paulownia wood are being used now because they're soft, they're malleable, they're easy to form and shape. Largely, even though you turn decoys on a lathe, there's still a lot of hand tools used to finish them before they get painted and put on a shelf or even used in hunting. So, again, I'm going to keep going back to the vision thing. The vision was, as you can tell, this was a fairly complicated form of art that required a great deal of hands-on, I mean, I don't want to call it sculpturing, but essentially sculpturing.
Sure.
A block of wood and turning it into initially a piece of useful hunting gear. So today, a beautiful collectible. As you might imagine, there's a rich tradition of that not every town in America, let alone the world, can boast, is something that this town is known for. And I say this quite often, usually as I'm critiquing something that seems to be held in higher esteem than the Decoy Museum and collecting, is if you Google the city of Havre De Grace to find out about this little town, you will find there's only a handful of things that make this town very famous. One, it had a prominent role in the War of 1812. The British burned the city of Havre De Grace as it was looking in the upper bay for Principio Ironworks, which was making munitions that were bombing the British.
Yeah.
They happened on Havre De Grace and said, well, we'll burn it down on the way. It's not what we're looking for, but we're going to take them out anyway. The second thing it's known for is hunting on the Susquehanna Flats and the decoy making that accompanied that. Another thing that it's known for, and I think it opened in 1912, closed in around 1950, 52, early 50s. Havre De Grace was home to one of the most famous thoroughbred horse racing tracks. In fact, we had a Kentucky Derby precursor race here. It was called the Chesapeake Stakes. And famous horses like Citation ran here. Citation ran in the Chesapeake Stakes in 1948 and lost. Went on to win the Triple Crown. So the Chesapeake Stakes was a very discriminating race. But Havre De Grace Racetrack was closed in the mid-50s, and all of the rights of betting and whatnot were transferred to Pimlico. In which is now home of the Preakness Stakes, right?
Yeah.
So Havre De Grace was very prominent. As a matter of fact, those of you who have ever seen the movie The Sting, Robert Redford says in The Sting, the results are in from Havre de Grace for the 9th race. So it was back in that time frame. We were a household name for horse racing. And of course, being on the bay, we were a waterman's town, hunting, fishing, crabbing, that kind of stuff. So it was a year-round what the water could bring you. Just to give you an idea of how the city started to grow, when the railroads emerged and market hunting became a real deal, ice houses popped up all over the place, because what did you need to do to preserve the ducks? When you were shipping them longer distance by rail, is you had to ice them down. So when they got to New York City, they weren't spoiled.
Right.
So you're going to find a tremendous number of ice houses popped up all along the Chesapeake Bay, especially in this upper bay. Again, it's our story to tell. So a simple question that most people would ask is, how does the little town of Havre De Grace, back then less than 12,000 people, have a decoy museum that tells such is this just some local story that nobody else deals with? But no, it's our story to tell. Right. And that's why it's here. And you look out the front door, and that was the playground that the kids played on. Yes. And it's very, very interesting story.
It is. What was the initial focus, and what were the first exhibits?
Initially, the museum was founded to celebrate the role Havre De Grace played, right? So you would imagine it focused on Havre De Grace decoy makers. Not exclusively, but the decoy makers from Havre De Grace. R. Madison Mitchell was still alive at the time this idea was fostered and was formed into reality. And so Mr. Mitchell became a focal point for that. Why? Mr. Mitchell was much more documented in his achievements than were the Holly family. Paul Gibson, Mr. Mitchell, Bob McGall, These were all local legends. And then the equipment that was used and the techniques. And so that was the focus initially.
Okay.
And then it developed into, well, you know, all of this was because of the flats, hunting on the Susquehanna Flats. So we need a gunning the flats exhibit.
Yeah.
So you talk about all the techniques that were used to hunt these birds. There were guns mounted on the bows of what they called punt gun skiffs that were 2 inches in diameter. And they fired them and the boat would recoil 10s or up to 50 feet when the thing went off. And it would kill 50 or 60 ducks at one shot. There was just all kinds of things developed. And as you might expect, people start killing hundreds of anything. Then laws start emerging too, because preservation and conservation became an issue.
What time frame would you say it started to become an issue?
I would say right at the turn of the century, 19th to 20th century, there was I think the initial act was called the Lacey Act. And I want to say it was like a 1908 kind of thing. It might not be exact date, but what it did was prohibit the sale of migratory birds across state lines.
Oh.
Ooh, all that railroad stuff went by the wayside. And then there was another conservation which outlawed the use of things like the punt gun and another multi-barreled gun that was mounted on the bow of a boat called a battery gun, when it was just that, a battery, a number of single barrels. And we have an example of both up in the museum. I think the one we have up there has 7, it looks like 7 shotgun barrels mounted on the front of a boat. And of course, back then, the ignition mechanisms weren't as complicated as they are today. So they would light some black powder and it would burn and shoot the guns off. The design was to have them all go off at the same time, but the black powder couldn't get to the last barrel fast enough. So it was like boom, 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 you know. All that was outlawed with the second act. And that was probably in the teens, 19 teens, in that area. Human intuition always figures out a way to get past laws, right? Surprising if you go see these guns, because they have a lot of wow factor to them, like, oh my goodness, somebody shot that. And you got to remember, they weren't held. They looked like a cannon on the front of a boat. The most deadly form of hunting on the Susquehanna Flats was the emergence of the sink box. A sink box, probably, well, we have a full-size sink box upstairs in the museum. It looked like a coffin that a hunter would lay in. And then it was a flat surface. The only thing that went below the surface was the little box the hunter laid in. And the rest of it floated. It was made of wood. And it had canvas curtains around the exterior. And cast iron decoys were set depending on the weight of a hunter. For instance, if I got into a sink box, I wouldn't have as many cast iron decoys because you were trying to bring it to the surface of the water.
Right.
So it could not be detected by the waterfowl. You would have a lot more cast iron decoys. And they were called sink box decoys. And so that another industry, people would mold these. They would cast these out of cast iron. They weighed 30 pounds a piece. Sink boxes was the most deadly. They were the most deadly form of hunting. Many more waterfowl were killed by means of sink box hunting. Sink boxes were all over the flats.
So did the hunter have? What did the hunter have to kill the?
We had a shotgun.
Oh, okay.
He just had a normal shotgun. Now they were probably 10 gauge shotguns back in those days. I mean, you had to hold it. It wasn't a mounted firearm, so you couldn't have a punt gun, for instance. Hundreds of decoys were used around each sink to lure the birds in. I mean, you can see very quickly how this cottage industry of decoy making emerged in Havre De Grace, because all of these people are descending upon this delta of shallow water where birds are just showing up by the millions. And it's a field day. I think it's important we discuss post-1935.
Okay.
Because in 1935, Well, even prior to that, when they were market hunting, you didn't have an outboard motor on a sink box and get from the shore to your sink box in the middle of the Susquehanna Flat. You had to have service people get you situated. There were boats, actually, they were using bushwhack boats. Bushwhack boat had its own form of hunting, but bushwhack boats were used. They looked like a fancy rowboat. They were used to get the hunter out to the sink box. Sink box was anchored out on the flats. People would get in and it would sink down to the water's level. The birds could not tell it was even there. They were painted gray. They looked like water. They were so deadly, they were outlawed in 1934.
Wow.
More ducks were killed with sink box hunting than
How
anything.
many seasons? I didn't mean
The
to cut
seasons
that.
used to be longer also. So,
How many seasons did it take for that to happen where it was out?
I'm not quite sure. I just know in 1935 is when it ended. Then sport gunning started. Now sport gunning is what is practiced today because it is illegal today. You got the Lacey Act, you got the Bird Conservation Treaty Act,
Right.
Migratory Bird Act was in the teens, 19 teens. And now you have the outlawing of the sink box. Hunting became sport hunting. Just like anyone can go to Walmart now and buy a hunting license.
Right.
There's all kinds of conservation limits for different species of birds. You almost need a bookkeeper out there when you're hunting to try to figure out, you got this bird flying at you at high speed and you've got to figure out what it is because you only can kill so many. You can imagine that when sport hunting, and even at the tail end of the market gunning, prominent, well-to-do folks were the hunters. Prior to the railroads and mass transportation, so to speak, it was an investment to get here. And once you got here, like say you were in Philadelphia, neighboring city, it's only an hour away by car. But when you were riding a horse or in a buggy, especially if they came from further, you had to be a person of means to be able to take advantage of that. You couldn't be a guy that needed to take off tomorrow to go hunting.
Right.
You had to be somebody who owned the company and you just went hunting for the week, month, or whatever. So well-to-do folks, people of means, were the first sport hunters. Now, with sport hunting, another industry that cropped up all throughout the Susquehanna Flats were hunting and ducking clubs.
Wow.
One that still exists today as a restaurant is the Wellwood Club in Charlestown, Maryland.
Oh.
It used to be called the Wellwood Rod and Gun Club. Sitting presidents used to go there and stay to hunt on the Susquehanna Flats. Most notably, Theodore Roosevelt and Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland was such an avid hunter that he commissioned a local decoy, not a Havre De Grace decoy carver, but a local area decoy carver to make him canvasback decoys. And they are still known today as the Cleveland canvasbacks. Okay, it is not entirely clear who was there. There's a lot of documentation was not all that good. If you go to the Wellwood today for dinner in Charlestown, there's a beautiful bald eagle sculpture that Theodore Roosevelt brought and gave to the Wellwood during one of his stays. So it's very steeped in history.
Do decoy makers have their own signatures?
They do. Much like any artwork, people who are much more skilled than I at identifying decoys can pick up a decoy and say, this is an R. Madison Mitchell, and it looks like it was made probably in the 50s. And they know because there are certain signatures within the paint, within the shape of something. There's actually even emerged a Harford County style and a Cecil County style.
Wow.
And even though it's subtle, there are differences. Harford County style had an upswept tail and the head was mounted directly to the top of the breast, where in Cecil County style, it was a paddle tail. It was not upswept, and it was mounted on a shelf. So if you look at a decoy, you can pretty much tell if it was influenced by Cecil or Harford
That's
County.
interesting.
Although there were crossovers. I mean, some people in Cecil County might have made it a little different. Charlestown, Maryland, which is a very small town in Cecil County, had 5 very famous decoy makers that play a role in the history. and I won't even try to name them because I'll certainly forget one of them and aggravate somebody. But John Graham is probably the father of the Cecil County style, and he was a Charlestonian, whereas John Daddy Holly would be the Harford County pioneer. So sport gunning is still practiced today, although conservation is in play. I mean, limits are adjusted as...
What's the season now?
And the seasons are much shorter. I think goose and duck season right now is not much more than over 30-day period, maybe 45 days for ducks. And the limit is one goose. And to tell you the truth, ducks are about as complicated as rockfish. You need an assistant to figure all the rules out because they change. But you're allowed so many of this species and so many of that species, and that's not standard each year. They change it. And I think they look at migratory data and they say, the canvasback migration numbers are down or they're up. So we're going to close the season on this species, but we're going to increase the season on that species. Because unknown, not realized by a lot of people, the pure conservationists think you shouldn't hunt anything. But that is as bad, if not worse, than hunting. Because now you'll be overrun with a particular species and you upset, you will, the natural order. It's like everything, right? Moderation. And then, of course, after the sink buck, I'm going to go to one more hunting form and then we will not talk about more. But once the sink box, leave it to the ingenuity of the hunters. Once the sink box was outlawed in 1935, some locals here in Havre De Grace developed a way of hunting called body booting. Body booting is you.
That sounds bad.
It's not for the meek. It's not for the faint of heart. I did it. I actually did it as a teenager.
Did you?
And it's still practiced today. It's not been outlawed.
So what is it? Lay it on us.
You actually put a dry suit on. Dry is just a figurative of speech. I've never been in a suit that was dry in my life. You put it on, you physically stand in the water. Now, you have to keep in mind that hunting season is in the months of December and January.
Okay.
This is not a warm weather sport.
No.
So imagine yourself standing on a windy day in 4 foot of water, waves lapping at your neck. Some days you have to break a little bit of ice to get out of the dock, depending on how cold it's been. And you're standing there for hours among decoys. And there's a certain decoy that's called a stick-up, which is nothing more than a silhouette that has a gun rack built on the back of it. You hammer it into the ground once you're out there, and it swivels. And it's a pipe inside a pipe, and it swivels to allow you to see the approaching waterfowl. And then around you are hundreds of decoys. You're hiding behind this silhouette. It's almost unfair. But it's never been outlawed. And as a youngster, I did participate in that with local folks that I grew up with, many older than I. And it's still practiced today, but it is a very, very successful way to hunt. It's just if you are cold-natured and you don't have the right equipment, you will never go more than once because it's brutal. It can be. It can be brutal. But it was never been outlawed because you're standing on the bottom. It's still practiced today. And that's a short version, believe me or not. That's a short version of what the history is that's being preserved.
It's very interesting.
You don't even have to like hunting or agree with it to realize that it was a very important thing in this part of the country. But not just this part. There are similar stories. Just go down the East Coast, for instance. There's a barrier island, very famous barrier island right off of Virginia called Cobb Island. Nothing's there now. It's a barrier island. And, I read a pretty extensive book on Cobb Island written by Dr. Lloyd Newberry. I learned in there that the sea giveth and the sea taketh these islands, especially barrier islands. And there was a period of time when the sea was allowing Cobb Island to grow. And Cobb Island was out there where all the migrating waterfowl. And where we were canvasbacks up here, they were brant and other wood duck species, not wood duck, black duck species down in Cobb Island, and geese, brant, and black ducks were the most common down there. And hunting was so prevalent, and people traveled there to do it, much like our story.
Right.
But Cobb Island's not our story to tell. It's Virginia's story to tell.
Yes.
And I think if you go to Michigan, there's Michigan stories, and if you go to Arkansas, there's certainly, I think Arkansas might be the migratory bird hunting capital of the United States. I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
But anyway, there's all good. There's four major flyways.
Yeah.
We happen to be along the Atlantic flyway, as was Cobb Island. But there's a Midwest one, and there's a mountain one, and then there's a Pacific one. They all start up in Canada, and they all come down, as seasons change to get away from the brutal cold.
Yeah.
And then they, when it starts warming up here, they, I guess, figure this ain't our thing. And they go back where it's a little cooler.
Yeah. So is there any trend or timeline for the decoys to become more than lures? Like when they started to become collector's items, how did that evolve? And
I think it has a simple answer. The emergence of plastics. In 1956, I think, the first polymer or plastic decoys were developed.
Oh.
Why would you spend all that time making a decoy by hand when you can just go get some plastic ones? And you can go buy a dozen plastic decoys at Dick's Sporting Goods for $120, or you can go buy one wooden decoy for $150. What would you do? And think about how light they are.
Yeah.
You can throw them in a boat. And when they get all banged up, you throw them away and go buy more. So I think the emergence of plastics and plastic decoys, which were started in the, I want to say probably late 50s, but more importantly later than that. I mean, they weren't mass produced in the 50s. Hunters had alternatives to the hand-carved artistic pieces. And at that point, the cottage industry of making decoys was so prevalent, people start collecting them. And then people start learning the history. Now say, well, gosh, if you study the history of all this hunting that took place in the Susquehanna Flats, you'll learn that Cecil County and Harford County made the decoys for that whole area. Who was the famous people? And now you want one of each one of theirs, and now you want one of each Harford County person. And then younger person comes along and had nothing to do with any of that history, but they think it's neat and they want to make it. And so they're making it. And so now they're not so famous for back in the turn of the century, but it looks neat, so I need one of those. The next thing you know, you start a collection. I'll tell you something that really, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but I do hang out with some folks who are. And I think it's generally agreed upon that COVID, believe this or not, if one thing came out of COVID that was probably good for decoy collecting, was the emergence of online auctions. Because the in-person auctions were you couldn't do it. And so all of a sudden online bidding became a big deal. You didn't have to be around people.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of the auction houses today rely on online bidding. You can go online and find an auction that's taking place over a period of 6 or 7 days, and then you can electronically bid on something, and that has skyrocketed the value of these things.
Oh, wow.
Because
the demand.
Think of the people it reaches. One of the largest and most prominent decoy auction houses is in St. Michael's, Maryland. So how many people go to St. Michael's to attend an auction?
Right.
Versus how many thousands of people can monitor one online now?
Right.
And COVID made us aware of that possibility. I mean, it didn't start with COVID, but it flourished with COVID because now people who were in that business of buying and selling decoys had a mechanism to do it. And it'll never go the other way. There are still live auctions, but they're much fewer and further between than they used to be. And even with live auctions, you can send your bid in via the airwaves. You can do it via the internet. When you go to a live auction, that room is not full of people. There are as many people manning phones and or websites.
It looks like the telethons that I used to see on TV.
It looks like the old Jerry Lewis telethon. They're manning the phones. There's as many people doing that because people are bidding from afar.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to fly across the country to buy something an auction that's being held in St. Michael.
Yeah.
So I have a very close friend who is the principal, one of the partners at the most prominent, believed to be the most prominent decoy auction houses that exist. And it's in St. Michael's. And there's many. And I'm going to use an example that's going to shock you. Shocked me, and I'm not easily shocked. We forged a relationship with this auction house. And what that has done for us, we've been given access to prominent collections to exhibit here.
Oh, neat.
How does that happen? The auction house signs a contract with a very prominent collector. And these auction houses are serving the entire North America and maybe beyond. It's not uncommon that a famous collector in Minneapolis, Minnesota, has perhaps the best collection of waterfowl decoys that exist in North America and contract a guy in St. Michael's to auction them off. So the guy in St. Michael's calls the Havre De Grace Decoy Museum and says, are you interested in putting Billy Smith's decoys on display for 2 or 3 months? Because we just signed an agreement to auction them. Only a fool says no.
Right.
We've been allowed to exhibit some pretty big time
That's
stuff.
awesome.
Now, when they're sold, just recently, in fact, probably 3 weeks ago in Chicago, outside of Chicago, Lombard, Illinois, two decoys of a collection of about 150 that were upstairs in one of our cases were auctioned. More than 2 were auctioned, but the first 2 that were auctioned, the first decoy brought $1.2 million.
Wow.
And the second one brought just a little over $1 million.
Wow.
So almost $2.25 million in 2 blocks of wood.
Wow.
And they were here at the
That's
Havre De Grace
awesome.
Museum.
Yeah.
And
that must really make you guys so proud. Make the board very
that's a
proud.
great segue to what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
It goes to my point of our vision and mission is changing. We are changing from what was founded 40 years ago as a local museum. And some say we've arrived. I'm a little more pessimistic and say we're arriving. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And there's a lot more complication than just having a couple neat exhibits to call yourself something bigger than you are. We're going to become, if we haven't begun to be, a super regional museum.
Oh, neat.
In other words, we are not just worried about what happened in Havre De Grace. Well, that's a fantastic story to tell.
Right.
And we're being pulled in that direction by local experts who not only, I use the auction house as an example, but local collectors. One thing you'll find about many decoy collectors, certainly not all of them, they're people of means too. When you're buying something for $1.2 million, you're not wondering where the next meal's coming.
Right.
You know? So what else do those people do? They appreciate the art form. They appreciate people who are trying to keep it in the forefront. And they're supporting those people.
Right.
So it helps us too, because somebody who's willing to buy a decoy for $1.2 million most likely will be supportive of an expansion effort at the museum.
Right.
That helped make it famous.
How's the museum grown over the years? And if you could talk about the current exhibits, and then what charitable events and fundraisers do you support?
I have built a relationship with many of the carvers, many of the collectors, many of the local decoy clubs, which is a segue into where we're going. How do we get where we want to go? We have to increase our service area. Okay? It's not that we don't appreciate the local patronage of Havre De Grace in Harford County, but I think we've exhausted where we're able to go if there are only customers. We have got to put some out-of-state tags on cars in our parking lot.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to do that? Put something in here they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the best way to do that? Go figure out who makes those things and where are they. Well, one thing you'll notice if you're paying any attention to the decoy collecting and carving world is go figure out who does the things you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll learn very quickly is there are a number of decoy collecting clubs all over this country. Okay, so you start with the ones close. I said we were trying to be a super regional, not a national.
Mm-hmm.
I've had somebody suggest, "Oh, you need to be national." I said, "You need to take a small step.
Yes.
You take a big step.
Yeah.
Okay, or you're gonna fall over."
That is a big lesson that everybody needs to learn.
You gotta learn that. You gotta.
You gotta.
I've always been a firm
Ease
believer,
yourself,
and
yeah.
I've said this my entire life. I think the right posture is you need to keep one foot firmly in what you're good at, and stretch the other foot as far forward as you can, but don't lose your balance.
Right.
Because if you try to take a step bigger than you can, what happens? You're going to fall down.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not any more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
Although many people have written books making it more complicated than that, but it's not any more than that. We have become active in decoy clubs up and down the East Coast. I'm probably personally a member of about 6 or 7.
Oh, neat.
And I mean, they're very inexpensive to join, like $20, $25 a year. And so what that does is it gives you a place. They all hold a monthly meeting. They all have probably 100 members each.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it. If you're a member of 7 decoy clubs, you have access to 700 people just by going to the meetings.
Right.
I mean, if you're a guy in sales trying to sell a product, which we are, right? We're trying to sell a museum as being a super regional museum. I have an easy way to have 700 potential new customers.
Right.
I'd say any salesperson in the world would accept that as a pretty good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, decoy clubs are all over the country. And we do have a relationship with the North American Decoy Collectors Club based in Iowa, actually.
Okay.
And they're working hard to up our profile in the
Oh,
Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all over. But to say we're a mainstay in those, I think is overstated.
Mm-hmm.
East Coast, not so much. There's a East Coast Decoy Collectors Association. It's called the ECDC, so it's East Coast Decoy Collectors Club.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a club of clubs. So all you do is you go to their event each year. It's held in St. Michael's, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big frat party. And for 3 or 4 days, you're eating, drinking, and smoking decoys. I mean, that's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. Everybody there has an interest in it.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn, go where the people who can teach you are.
Right.
You can't learn at home. Although we do have a group that feels all you have to do is Google something.
Mm-hmm.
But really all you
go.
have to do is get yourself...
Be present.
Be present. There's so many stories to tell and repeat that the old timers tell. And trust me, if I can tell you one thing the old timers don't do, is write things on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
I know.
And so
they need to. They need to have an old timers club.
You're trying to unearth history.
Mm-hmm.
And the internet probably isn't your source.
Mm-mm.
You have got to rub noses with people who are 92 years old and understand what they did and why they did it.
Right.
I'm currently going to go the last of Crisfield, Maryland's decoy makers, original ones, is 88 years old. And he's in declining health, but still very mentally sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with him at the ECDC event here back. We had it in early April. We're going to write a story in our magazine about him. But I don't write stories unless I'm sitting across from somebody. I don't research it online and write a story.
Yeah.
I have to go there. And so I'm working it out around his rehab schedule. I mean, he's 88 years old, behaving like most people who are 88 years old, And not every day is a day he wants to entertain a visitor.
Right.
So he's working with his personal schedule to accommodate me. He's a super wealth of knowledge, and I want to do that. There's another gentleman, not nearly as far along in his decoy life. He's probably in his 70s. I'm going on a trip up to New Jersey And while I'm up there playing golf, I'm going to sneak over and see him a couple afternoons, get some photos of him around his shop. And we're also going to write an article about him.
That's awesome.
And why are we doing it right now? Because we happen to have 2 exhibits up there. One of the guy in Crisfield and one of the guy in New Jersey.
Very cool.
Who happens to be in the same town the golf course I'm going to.
And,
what a coincidence.
What a pity.
I know some of your questions from this are about the Canvasback, and it's pretty far down the list, but we use the Canvasback magazine as an outlet to get the message out to and develop our followership and to increase our followership.
Now, I might not remember correctly, but you don't have to be a member to get it, but you get a discount if you are a member.
If you're a member, it comes to your house in the mailbox 4 times a year. If you visit the museum, we encourage you to take one home with no charge.
Okay.
Other than that, you would have to obtain one at a show because, we're just not sending them to a blind list. We send them to members and we give them to visitors who come and visit the museum. And then other than that, you have to pick one up off a table at our display table we would have at a show. It's a 48-page, full-color compilation of scholarly articles and what's going on in the industry kind of stuff. And I have the honor, I say with a smile, of being the editor of that. And it at times is a little overwhelming because 48 pages of content 4 times a year is a lot of work.
It is.
And I don't consider myself a writer, and I don't write all the articles. I am very fortunate to have a group of folks that want to write regularly for the Canvasback. But then I do run into times when they all take the same month off and I got to fill 48 pages. And we also have some really close relationships with some really great photographers. I'll tell you a story that we're about to do. I met a young man at a Decoy show down in Eastern Shore, Virginia, who's from an island called Tangier Island. Have you ever heard of that? It's in Virginia. It's actually just across the Maryland-Virginia line, but it sits out in the middle of I guess it's the Chesapeake Bay still.
Is it like the Tangier outlets?
No, Tangier Island has 300 people that live on it. It's tiny. It's a fishing town. I mean, it's an island. I mean, people have to take a 45-minute boat ride to get to the mainland. So this gentleman, he's only 24 years old. He's a photographer, and he's a waterman, and he's the last hunting guide in Tangier Island, him and his dad. And we've become friends from a handful of shows. And he's come for the last 2 years to the Havre De Grace show. And I made him a promise. In fact, we solidified it here a couple weeks ago. I want to do a story on Tangier Island. And he's the last of the hunting from Tangier Island. And him being a photographer, there's magnificent pictures of Tangier Island and the history of Tangier. So I am going to go and he's going to meet me at Crisfield in his boat, and we're going to take a 45-minute jaunt out to Tangier. We're going to spend the day, and then he's going to bring me back because you can't drive anywhere from Tangier. There's no vehicles on Tangier Island. They're golf carts. And even a fire truck is a golf cart with a little portable pump. It's kind of cute. But I find it interesting that this is another way the museum gives back. Here's a 24-year-old trying to carry on a tradition that's, I don't like to use the word dying, but it's not flourishing.
Right.
Why wouldn't we do our part?
Right.
Put him on the cover.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we want to encourage the next 24-year-old to do something.
Right.
You want somebody to see that magazine cover and say, that could be me, or it's going to be me. Likewise, one of our carvers who had kind of gotten out of it a little bit, and his grandson has picked it up.
Oh,
He's
nice.
a Cecil County guy. And so that's brought Grandpa back into it.
Yeah.
And now he has gone from a used to come around a lot and volunteer at the museum to now he wants to do it again. And he just sent me an email not a week ago, saying how much fun he had at the show. His grandson had such a wonderful show, most he's ever sold in his life. And he says, you know what we ought to do? Now, this guy has built models of these punt guns and battery guns.
Yeah.
He wants to volunteer to go out and reenact that
Oh, wow.
out in front of the museum,
Yeah.
and invite people to come
Oh,
and
that's
witness
awesome.
it.
Yeah.
So you see how one thing builds
Mhm.
on another,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, people think you're some kind of genius, but you're really not. You're just paying attention.
And you're just making relationships.
It's all about relationships.
Mhm.
We, like every nonprofit should be, if they're not doing it, and I think they all are trying to do it, is we have an aging demographic
Mhm.
that founded us 40 years ago.
Yeah.
If you look at our membership, it's aging.
Mhm.
So a challenge that Heather and the rest of us have is, how do we get younger people involved so 40 years from now, somebody's sitting in front of a person like you doing
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah.
And the way to do it is you've got to cater a little bit. What makes it interesting? How do you bring these people in?
Right.
And so we're always trying to learn about adjacencies and things like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I tell you a market we don't tap. This is crazy as it sounds. The art market.
Really? That is crazy.
That's an enormous group of folks, right?
Because that's what I was thinking. Like you would get artists and young artists interested.
We need to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean just more than just flat artists that paint pictures of ducks. I mean,
well, I was
it's
going to
an
say,
art form.
like, you could even have, because I know a lot of local places have local artists. So
Right.
if there's a young decoy maker, they could.
Well, Havre De
put them-
Grace, you may know this, you may not. I mean, I have a benefit of 70 years of hanging out in town. So Havre De Grace is an arts and entertainment city. I think a young one, but an arts and entertainment city. There's a project going on. The same guy who founded the Decoy Museum actually has founded another project called Harmerstown. It's going to be like an artist's emporium where you come in, rent a space, and it's where those murals are.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be Harmerstown. And then
neat.
and if you notice that alley, Grawl Alley, that's a testament to the racetrack that I told you Havre De Grace is famous for. So see, it all ties together.
Yeah.
So Alan Fair, that's Alan Fair as well. He'll go down in history as paying attention to what's important in the history of Havre De Grace, because everything he's touched. He just announced another new project.
Yeah.
And he's like 92-year-old, just bundled up with energy. He just purchased a home. You could hit a golf ball between our back door and the house I'm talking about, that had a prominent history, supposedly a documented prominent history in the Underground Railroad. And so he's going to open an Underground Railroad museum.
Nice.
There. So that's another thing. If you had to pick something other than the horse racing, the hunting, War of 1812, we were a stopover for the Underground Railroad. Crossing the Susquehanna River was very important.
Right.
And this was a stopover to figure out how to get points north, because you had to cross that river. And that's a couple of mile river.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it when you're just looking across it, but it is. It's at least a mile. Back to what I was saying. So to become a super regional museum, you have to bring in people from outside your comfort zone, and you have to bring in stuff that people from those areas want to see.
Right.
So we work very closely with the Potomac Decoy Collectors Club, the Delmarva Decoy Collectors Club, the New Jersey Decoy Collectors Club, soon to become more active with the Long Island Decoy Collectors Club. There's a Lehigh Valley one, Delaware Valley Collectors Club. I mean, that gives you enough to stay busy right there.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to go, there's 10 more within 5 hours drive.
Yeah. And that's a lot of people.
It's a lot.
That's
and
a lot
we
of
get
base.
stuff. We get folks from Carolina bringing us exhibits. And
Oh, that's so nice.
that's how you do it. We're starting to bring in people from outside our, a local museum, you probably have a 50-mile radius of service. If you want to be super regional, you can't. You gotta extend that well beyond that.
Yeah.
You gotta be grabbing people from southern Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, northern Virginia, the entire state of Delaware. It's okay that somebody from Knott's Island, North Carolina wants to come too. It's okay, because there's a lot of history.
Yeah.
There, the Delmarva Peninsula is enormous amount of history in waterfowl hunting and decoy making. So that's our goal, and we're going to get there. It's just we're going to get there with a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do? What are some of the obvious next steps for us? Well, if you tour our museum, you'll find out we have about 15,000 square feet, and we're 20 pounds of peanuts in a 5-pound bag, is what we are.
Yeah.
And so the obvious next thing is you have to get a little bigger to bring in this stuff.
Right.
You know, you have to give yourself capability to host. You can't just have one showcase from out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're running regularly 4 20-foot showcases plus from out of the area exhibits.
Wow.
Constantly on a probably every 5 to 6 month kind of rotation. So you ask, what are the current exhibits up there? The Potomac Decoy Collectors Club is sponsoring an exhibit called Half the Sky. I didn't understand the name quite at first, but they're all hen decoys. They're all female species ducks. Never before exhibited.
Wow.
Why? The females aren't the ones with color that draw the people. The females are just not bright colored.
Right.
They're very subdued in color, you know, and so there's probably 80 or there's 88 to be exact, because we had to put a picture of each one of them in a past canvas back. There's 88 decoys up there of nothing but hen decoys. Okay, so that came from Potomac Decoy Collectors Club. The Delmarva Club has Oliver Toots Lawson from Crisfield. He was, you know, if you ask anybody who have they heard of that makes decoys, I would be shocked if 100% of them don't tell you the Ward brothers from Crisfield, Maryland, because they were among the most famous. In fact, we, even at the Decoy Museum in Havre De Grace, have a picture over there on the wall of the Ward brothers. They're just very well known. Well, Oliver Lawson's from that era. He knew those people. He worked in their shop.
Yeah.
So that's two. Third case, a gentleman named Bob Seabrook from Absecon, New Jersey, just happens to be outside of Atlantic City where this golf course is. He brought a very fine collection of shorebirds, which in Maryland we don't really have a lot of shorebirds. Why? Because we don't have a lot of shore.
Right.
Ocean City.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Aztec, right? And so yes, there's some down there, but up here you're going to find most decoy makers up here don't make shorebird. So that's a wonderful exhibit. And then the fourth exhibit, that's we call them temporary exhibits. Each year when we pick an honorary chairman for our show, we showcase them in one of those. Now, they don't have to be a decoy maker. This year's honorary chairman was not a decoy maker. He's a historian. And he happens to be the president of the Potomac Decoy Collectors Club. And he's been a volunteer here, and he's had a relationship with us here for over 25 years, probably almost 30 years. And he sits on our board now, actually. We pipe him in via modern day technology.
Yeah.
We don't make him drive up here he lives in Alexandria, Virginia. So we don't, or Springfield, Virginia. We don't ask him to come to a board meeting. He pipes in by Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever we use. They are the new temporary exhibit. On top of that, we have permanent exhibits of R. Madison Mitchell, the most prolific decoy maker in Havre De Grace's history. Paul Gibson, another very prominent maker of that time. Bob McGall, another prominent maker of that time. Charlie Joyner from Chestertown, Maryland. So see, they're not all just from Havre De Grace.
Right.
Charlie Joyner, Chestertown, Harry Jobs, Jimmy Pierce. And if you notice, we have some of the figurines up there of those people in the cases. And they're the perfect likenesses of those folks. Jimmy's the only living person that has a figurine upstairs. He's 92.
Wow.
And those figurines are absolutely wonderful depictions of the real people, because I knew most of them at some point, and the faces on those figurines really give away the personalities. We were very fortunate. A former Disney employee actually designed those.
Oh, wow.
And he's long gone too, but we haven't done a figurine in a very long time, because if you think about it, you need an enormous exhibit to put a figurine in. It's a life-size figurine. It's a full body thing. They were also honorary chairman of our show at one point or another. In the early days, we used to get a full collection of whoever was honorary chairman, and then very shortly after starting that, they figured out you're going to need to build warehouses for this stuff, because a full collection is probably could be 30, 40 pieces of somebody's. What do you do with 44 years of 30 or 40 pieces?
Right.
Enormous number of things to store. So we need an expansion. We currently have 15,000 square feet. We have a move afoot to add about 12,000 additional square feet, which sounds like a lot, and is a lot, but it's 4,000 on 3 floors. So it's really not a lot. When you look at it, it's not going to look that different when you look at the outside of the building,
Right.
but 3 floors.
Right.
The downstairs is all going to be backroom stuff because we're bursting out we got stuff lined up on the walls, and we're bursting out the
They're
seams.
bursting at the seams.
We are. We need more space to have events, but we can't afford. We're not running a banquet business,
Right.
But we
right.
need to be able to have 120 people in the house for something, whether it be a presentation, because we're doing that. You know, aside from the Canvasback magazine, which is printing scholarly articles about things that we exhibit, we also invite those folks to come in and we do a moderated discussion. At first we did like a PowerPoint thing. You're drawing people from 90 plus years old to 20 something
Right.
years old. And who the heck wants to sit around and watch a PowerPoint slide presentation? Very boring.
Not many.
So what we determined, what we moved to was like a moderated discussion. You bring in one or more people who are very familiar with your subject, who sit and ask them questions.
Like a Q&A.
And it stimulates the stories that people need to hear.
Right.
That will never be heard if you don't get them out. I mean, Oliver Lawson, for instance, great guy. I sat in his hotel room at St. Michael's here a month or plus ago and just asked questions. And he was like a wealth of knowledge. You're not going to get that in a PowerPoint presentation. You're going to get a bunch of pictures of ducks he made.
Right.
We all know he made ducks.
Yeah.
That's not what you want to.
That's not his story.
That's not his story.
Yeah.
Everybody made ducks, or they wouldn't be in a magazine. I'm not going to have a magazine article. I don't make ducks, so they're not going to write one about me. Okay, so in fact, I rarely put pictures of decoys in articles about them. Now, that's not true for all authors. Some authors feel it's all about the decoy. Personally, I usually fuss with the authors saying, could we pare this down a little bit? And they say, no, we got to put them all in there. 88 pictures of that upstairs. So a dear friend who wrote that article, and he is absolutely wonderful writer. But I just thought, I said, it's going to look like our high school yearbooks. All those little pictures. Because you can't make them large.
Yeah.
God, you'd have to have 150-page magazines. We have these presentations, and they draw 60 to 80 people, depending on time of year, what else is competing with people's time.
Right.
One thing we've done by design, it's not coincidental, we've hosted people from Tullytown, southeastern Pennsylvania, Tullytown, Pennsylvania, which is a northeast suburb of Philadelphia. We've had guy that did the Cobb Island stuff. We've had carvers from the Jersey area. We tend to bring in the folks from outside. Why? Because we're going to get our local folks, but we want New Jersey plates in the parking lot.
Right.
You know, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You know, remember what I said earlier? You got to put something in here they want to see. They want to hear.
Yeah.
As much as I treasure the history of Havre De Grace, it's not as important to others as it is to a guy in Havre De Grace.
Right.
They take a passing interest. They may not want to hear a 2-hour presentation. They just want to hear the cliff notes.
Right.
You know? But a Jersey guy, if he knows you're interviewing Bob White, for instance, from Tullytown, Pennsylvania, who identifies with the Jersey Club, they're coming. They want to hear Bob White.
Yeah.
You know? And the Havre De Grace people want to hear him too. You know, the people you bring in, those 2 collections that came to us from the auction house. We had a guy fly in from the Midwest that actually did the presentation because the gentleman who owned the collection suffers from Alzheimer's disease and he could not do it. So the guy he hired to go out and find all these decoys for him came and did it. And I have to say this just to brag a little bit. I think bragging typically doesn't get the message across. Usually you just have people come, witness it for themselves, make their own impressions, and you don't have to open your mouth in most cases. After about an hour and 15 minutes of moderated discussion, the gentleman who came is a very notable decoy collector and aficionado of the industry. I had made my way to the front of the room to thank him for wrapping up, during the wrap up. And right before I opened my mouth, he said, "Can I just say a couple more things?" And I said, "Sure." And he told the 60 or plus people, I don't forget how many came for that particular one. He said, "I don't know that you guys realize what you have here." He said, "I've been to every decoy museum in this country." Because that's what he does. He's lived his whole life doing that. And he said, "This is by far the best decoy museum in the United States."
Wow.
He said, "I hadn't been here in a number of years, but it is absolutely, you can tell it was designed by decoy people. And it has not emerged into some abstraction in an effort to make it more interesting."
Right.
So I think what you'll find, everybody's looking for ways to grow. Everybody does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't grow, you're dying, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
It's the opposite of growth is death. And it's the beginning of the death spiral when you stop growing. What people do is they're latching onto things. I mean, all of us have a tendency to migrate towards what brings in more people. I need to sell more tickets. And oftentimes we sell our soul to that. We give away why we were there to begin with. And we're trying very hard not to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what that speaker was trying to tell us. You guys have stuck with the mission.
Yeah.
And in fact, as we're changing to a more super regional type of thing, we actually have a committee chaired by that historian that's in Springfield, Virginia, to redevelop. I mean, you have to change. Every once in a while, your mission, you change it.
Yeah.
It evolves. And so they're re-looking at the mission to encompass.
Right.
So we're not operating outside the mission. Right now, we take a step out. And I told you, 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and we're firmly out.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure we're here 40 years from now. And the only way to do that is you have to change. You have to get a broader audience.
Yes.
Because our membership, there was a lot of fanfare when the museum was first founded. Everybody bought a honorary or some type of membership for $100. And so now what you find out, you got 600 members, 300 of which haven't been in the building in 20 years. Okay? But they're lifetime members because, so really half your membership rolls are supporting the museum. And it's probably not a surprise that the operations budget for this type of facility is enormous.
Yeah.
This is a $350,000 a year plus operations budget. That's a lot of $8 admissions at the front door.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you don't get it from just admissions, good thing, because we wouldn't be here. But you get it from a variety of things. We're all writing grants where we can. Most grants today, though, do not allow operations use. So we're holding fundraisers, and the only thing we haven't done yet is a chicken barbecue out front.
How can people find out about your fundraisers? Where can they go to see?
We have recently, I say recently because it has the benefit of being true. It's recently. We have recently tried to up our profile on social media to reach a segment of people. You're not going to reach everybody.
Right.
You're going to reach a segment of people. We use Constant Contact, but a nice thing about that is you got to already have the contact for Constant Contact to reach them. But how do you populate a Constant Contact database? Did I mention there's a lot of decoy clubs? Guess what they all have? Mailing lists. Emailing lists. But even then, not all of them share. Our publication gets around. Other than that, if you ask me 3 years ago, I was really on a tirade about this, but I answered my own question after I looked into it. The number one resource that every nonprofit needs is a marketing person.
Mm-hmm.
And the resource that every nonprofit doesn't have is a marketing person.
Right.
And the reason for that is you cannot afford to have a marketing person as a standalone thing. You can't.
Right.
It's a multi-hat operation. You want to go out and find customers in search of what you have to offer.
Right.
And if you go find the right customers, they'll tell you what to buy, what to make.
Yeah.
Just like if we go interact with the right people, they'll tell you what your next exhibit ought to be.
Mm-hmm. That's like me. I get people who kindly give me suggestions of who I should try to have on my show, or who I should try to, because that's what they want to hear. That's what they're
Right.
interested
Well,
in. It's not just about me.
I once said, sitting in that chair down there at a board meeting, to the president who was sitting in this chair, I once said, I don't know how good I would be at we were talking about succession planning, and I was vice president at the time, and I said, I don't know how good I would ever be about finding the next exhibit. And I just don't have that depth of phone book,
Mm-hmm.
My address book doesn't allow me to make those calls. What I underestimated was it takes time, and it's always evolving, is when you go out and interact within the industry, your challenge now becomes not what to do as the next exhibit is managing the queue.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before you were saying, I could never build a queue. Now it's managing the queue is the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shortage because we have exposed ourselves at all levels. It's not just me.
Right.
There's people, I have board members and our employees, they're all out touching the industry. No idea is a bad one. The only bad idea is one you don't pursue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or evaluate.
Right.
That's a bad idea.
Yep.
The one you didn't pursue, because that'll probably be the best one. And I still feel that relationships will get you where you want to go. You have to be smart enough to listen to the right people,
Mm-hmm.
and they will guide you.
Yeah.
As soon as you think you know it all, that's when failure begins.
Mm-hmm. That is
it absolutely
true.
does.
Yes.
It's true in my personal my career, and you just have to realize that there's always somebody out there who knows a little bit more than you.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to put you in the right place. They might not give you the exact path, but they're going to make you think.
Right.
Now you're going to apply your skill set to drive that dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's my simple strategic plan. I just printed out an old strategic plan that I rewrote, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago that needs upgrading. And it's just one of the things that I need to do. Every organization needs to have a 5-year plan, so to speak. And this one, 5-year plan is typically outdated the day you sign the front page, right?
Yeah.
You just have to do it. And so I just reminded myself last night, because it has some history in there, and I didn't know how deep you wanted to know, and what year did you put this on? And I didn't remember all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
We're not a strong marketing organization, but yet the lifeblood of our existence 20 years from now is marketing our product.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we enjoy hearing the most from visitors is one of the things I don't enjoy from customers. In the same token, the most common thing a customer of our museum says is, I had no idea this place was here. What a wonderful museum.
Mm-hmm.
Most people smile and say, so-and-so said, and I frown and say, we didn't do a good job of reaching that person. They had to stumble in the front door to have a wonderful experience. We need to tell them how to have a wonderful experience to bring them in the front door. You know what I mean? And so there's where marketing, and as I said, we can't afford to have dedicated resources to it. So what you have to depend on is volunteers come along, and this person has some expertise in that. This person has some. Together you have that. But volunteerism, see, that's the other biggest challenge. Volunteerism is on the wane across the board.
I always wonder about that, though, because I know there always seems to be such a push for people volunteering. More so now, they have to in high school. They have to get so many, in order to graduate, they have to get so many hours.
Well, hopefully it's to build a thought process as people leave high school to where they want to keep volunteering for things.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, volunteerism's on the wane in a big way. It just is.
Do you offer classes? Do you teach? I had seen it on the internet, but I hadn't
One
I
of
didn't know if
the
you
one
had
of
a-
the things that the museum did in the earlier days was there were carving classes, there were how to do a specific thing, maybe painting a decoy head or something like that. I would say we're not doing as much of that as we probably wish we were, because it's my opinion that that would be a mechanism to lure in a new generation.
I was just thinking like more hands-on things.
And so that requires two things. That requires somebody willing to come teach that class, and then that requires somebody to market that class to youngsters.
Yes.
We do a series of outreach kind of things. I was an Eagle Scout as a youngster, and so I'm familiar with the scouting program. One of the badges you earn as a Cub Scout when you're young is the whittling chip, and that teaches you how to penknife safety. We offer a whittling chip class to the Cub Scouts. It's a little bit of an outreach thing.
Yeah.
And it gives you an opportunity to tell the story a little bit, and we allow the kids to tour the museum.
Are there some female carvers, decoy makers?
Not as many as you might think, but there are. We have some featured upstairs. There are some. I'm trying to think of. I know Linda Robinson, Dick and Linda Robinson from Bel Air. Linda's a carver and a painter. You know, an area we haven't marketed hard enough that we need to. I'm thinking about taking classes myself. Is carving classes. There's a handful of people that teach them.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was thinking with the school.
That's another way to kind of market yourself. So one of the questions that you asked, what were the most difficult exhibits?
Yeah, and then which had the most surprising, the one that the story behind it was surprising.
So I would say two of the most difficult exhibits to craft. We had a visit from an African American clergyman one day. And whoever was working came and said, they just had a gentleman visit, and he was very critical of the fact that we do not feature any black carvers.
I was going to ask about that too.
So then he wrote a follow-up note, and he said that we didn't tell the whole story. As hard as we try to tell a complete story, it now becomes your mission to figure out what you might have missed. So I actually took it on myself to try to figure out how can we have an African American decoy carvers exhibit. That was an extremely difficult task. And if you've walked through that museum, there's one up there. And it's probably the only one that exists.
Wow.
So there were two prominent names that you hear about, but you couldn't find anything about. There's no documentation of this. This is what made it very difficult. It was what made both of these exhibits very difficult. The two that I'm referring to were from Crisfield, Virginia. One guy was a cab driver in Crisfield, Virginia. Crisfield, Maryland. He had a son. They both had strong backgrounds in carpentry. Sherman Jones was a gentleman who was the son of the cab driver in Crisfield, Maryland. He worked in a shop owned by a gentleman, Lloyd Tyler, also Crisfield, Maryland. He helped Lloyd make decoys. Lloyd Tyler, for being an old Eastern shoreman, had a brilliant idea that he empowered Sherman to help him make decoys, realizing Sherman couldn't sell a single one, but Lloyd could sell them all. So Lloyd marketed a lot of decoys that Sherman made, that he paid Sherman for. Under he maybe painted them up a little bit, and then he signed them, but now they became marketable. How this all ties together and why it's important to go down to Crisfield, Maryland and interview Mr. Lawson is I'm sitting at a Delmar, and why you should go to Decoy. So it all fits in. Why you should go to Decoy Club meetings is I'm sitting there chowing down on a hamburger at a Delmarva Decoy Club meeting, all the way down south of Salisbury. And the guy sitting at the front of the room was Oliver Lawson, 88 years old. It was 87 probably at the time. And he's being asked questions. And and I'm sitting there eating my sandwich because it's held in a restaurant. This guy's nickname was Toots. Toots Lawson. So they said, Toots, you worked in a lot of shops around Crisfield. Could you discuss that? And he talked about working with the Ward brothers and this and that. He said, but I really work with Lloyd Tyler more than anybody. And I'm right in the throes of trying to figure this whole Sherman Jones thing out. So I'm like, I raised my hand. There's a room that had, I think that night we had 70 people. And I said, did you know a gentleman named Sherman Jones? And he goes, Sherman? I worked shoulder to shoulder with him for years. Really? Could you discuss that a little bit? And I'm like frantically writing notes down because I'm trying to develop this exhibit. And basically he said what I always thought. Sherman could not sell a decoy on his own. Yeah. But Lloyd made Sherman popular indirectly, made him famous. So what he said was, his exact words were, he called him Sherm. He said, Sherm's fingerprints are on every decoy that came out of that shop. And he said he chopped bodies for Lloyd Tyler. Remember I said they used hatchet. He made all the shorebirds. And there was a lot of shorebirds coming out of that shop because that's down in Chrisfield where there are shorebirds. All of a sudden now, I'm getting all this insight into Sherman Jones. There's still not a lot of known about his dad. Then here's a weird thing. So my daughter, how's my daughter playing? My daughter marries a guy from Milford, Delaware. She lives in Wilmington, Delaware. I learn about a black decoy carver who lives now in Milford, Delaware. And I asked her father-in-law at a Easter dinner at her house one year, I said, did you know a guy named Douglas Gibson from Milford, Delaware? And he goes, Doug? I was on the Milford City Council with Doug Gibson.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I said, really? I said, is he still alive? And he said, I think so. I said, if you called him, would he answer the phone? If I identified myself, I'm sure he would. Well, I probably sat in Doug Gibson's living room a half a dozen times after that. He said, sure, you tell that young man to come down here, I'll talk to him.
Awesome.
Mr. Gibson was 99 when I met him.
Had all his faculties.
And I
remembered everything.
He was good. His son lived with him at that point. His son was in his 70s. So Mr. Gibson talked to me on, I know, 5 or 6 occasions. I kept going to Milford. It's only a couple hours away. So he's a part of that exhibit upstairs. And then I met another guy named James, but he's right outside of Chincoteague. So I have the cab driver and his son, the two Joneses, Mr. Gibson. I learned Mr. Gibson's father made decoys, but only to hunt with himself. He didn't sell any. And now I've got James. I can't think of his last name. And he was my favorite of them all. I can't believe I can't remember his last name. James Johnson. So then I find out James was taught by a very prominent white decoy maker down the road from him, Mr. Grayson Chesser, who I know well.
Oh, wow.
So it's amazing what you learn.
Yeah.
You got to dig in.
You
got to put the shovel in the ground to find the worm, you know?
Yep.
From all of this emerged a story to tell about the influences of African Americans on decoy carving. It was not an overnight success story. But it's like most research, right? I mean, I came from a science background, so the first experiment doesn't work.
Right.
And you just have to have the wherewithal to not give up. You got to run down some blind alleys once in a while to get to the right street.
Right.
A very nice story emerged. And it ended with James giving me anything I wanted from his shop to put in the exhibit. Mr. Gibson, we went out and he gave me the key. He was on a walker then, and he says, go out there, anything you see out there, just take it. Put it in the exhibit. So I left with like tubs of stuff, and we cleaned it all up. Mr. Gibson's shop probably hadn't been in 10 years. And James had all his stuff in the back of like an old Ryder truck. And I never did see his shop. He sits on the front porch of his little modest home, carving and watching traffic go by. Yeah. James is probably 80 now. So that's how that exhibit was born. But it wasn't an overnight success story, but it was a success story.
Yes.
A very similar experience was this, as crazy as it sounds, this Holly family thing. No documentation. That's the problem with both of them. It isn't that the names weren't prevalent. It was just nobody wrote anything down.
Yeah.
And nobody's here to ask anymore. They're all gone.
Yeah.
Nobody knows John Daddy Holly.
And sometimes you're not thinking about it.
No.
Like, it's not that you don't want to or whatever,
Right.
but you're
You always
not
feel
in
like
that
you
space
can do
yet.
it any time. I had a very close friend in business who had a box at the Chicago Stadium where Michael Jordan played for the Chicago Bulls. And he always asked me when I went to Chicago to visit him and do business with him, "You want to go to the game tonight?" And I'd say, "Nah." He said, "Bulls are playing somebody." He says, "Come on, I'll give you the ticket. You got to use the box." I always felt I could do it later. And what happened? Michael Jordan leaves, and there's no later.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. So, of all the things I didn't do in life, I could have gone and seen Michael Jordan. He offered me a Mike Ditka signed football. He was personal friends with Mike Ditka of the Chicago Bears. And I just always felt I could get it later.
Yeah.
And I never got it. And so you do have to seize opportunities. Like going to sit with Mr. Lawson. You got to go do it.
Yeah.
It just has to go.
Yeah.
In fact, I've enjoyed each and every one of these interviews I've conducted. It's been very much a learning experience. And that's, after you do them for a few years, is when you start stacking background on top of background. Pretty soon a story emerges, and it's pretty similar. Geography's changed, but the story's pretty similar. So I'd say the Holly exhibit, which we haven't even done a ribbon cutting, but it's open now, and it's a soft opening. We had to write a grant to get the remainder of the money, and we're waiting to hear whether we're going to get it. You have to you have to have a mindset that you're willing to invest the time to learn about this whole history, background, because you not only have to unearth the story, you have to then figure out how to tell it. Because one of the questions that I think we talked about discussing today was, what's the mechanics of an exhibit?
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
It isn't just put things on a shelf.
And you want to do it justice, too. You want to do the story justice.
It has to be factual.
It has to be interesting
It
for
has
other
to be
people.
interesting. It's not, you're not creative writing. I mean, it's got to be, and artifacts have to be available. And one thing you'll learn quickly when you get involved in a museum is the museum doesn't own everything in a museum. There are people who loan you stuff for long periods of time. And so part of the work here is you have to maintain that data. You know, these particular decoys belong to Bob, and Bob loans them for every 10 years. It needs to be revisited, and you have to insure them. So if the place catches fire, Bob's not out. These decoys, because these are generally one of a kind things. You can't just go to Amazon and get another one. Although you probably can go to Amazon and find them somewhere.
You could find a decoy.
Pinterest every once in a while, I notice, has decoys from people from yesteryear. But I don't know how authentic all that stuff is. One of the challenges that I've undertaken, and Nate, the young man that was in here when you first came in, he's taken under his wing now, is you have to marry modern graphics and what you can produce with the story.
Yeah.
You know, it can't all be that, but there has to be enough of it.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention to any museum, one of the keys to make it more exciting to somebody who's less than 70 or 80 years old is it needs to be interactive.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. And so when you wander around upstairs, you will find there's a series of touchscreen monitors that you can go learn as little or as much about any of those topics as you want. We spearheaded we was a pretty small group, like two, spearheaded a project to go get all that information. Interview those people. Yeah. And I decided, because I led that project, why am I worried about telling the story? You know, Bill Gates equipped me with an iPhone that was a wonderful recording device.
Yes.
Video. I now have a 17, But those weren't shot with this. I shot all those videos with like an iPhone 14, and people are shocked. You'd have thought I was a videographer, and I don't know a thing about it. I'm just holding the thing.
I know.
You don't even have to be good.
I know. All mine are with my phone.
You just point and shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Bill Gates has made this pretty simple. This is an Apple device,
Yeah.
so Steve Jobs has made this very simple for us to be good at things. All that stuff. I just went around the Decoy shops and said to all kinds of carvers, not just local ones, all over the place, talk to me about this.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
And I'm just shooting video.
That's awesome.
And you look at it, some of it looks like it's professionally done, and I can tell you it wasn't.
It
It was not even hardly edited. Edited a little bit. You have to marry the modern with the old. The story's the old.
Yes.
But now how do you present it? The other thing you have to be cognizant of, the days of storyboards are over. Okay, I mean, museums used to be all about storyboards, right? You always walked in, the whole place was like a library, and there was this,
and you had to read it yourself.
Oh my God!
Which I don't mind.
Little type, and
but even my attention span is waning.
Right, and so you have to have the right amount of words, but some words, but not. You're not trying to write a PhD thesis,
right,
on a piece of gator board.
Yeah.
You gotta marry some video, some audio. I mean, Jimmy Pierce, the guy that helped found this museum, he's not a video subject. His mannerisms were such he wasn't a video. He was an audio subject. Why do I try to retell Jimmy's story? I let Jimmy tell.
Yeah.
So that made what was looked to be a very daunting project, made it into an easy project. All I had to do was amass the pieces, not think of all the pieces. That's what I thought at first. I'm going to have to think of all these pieces, but I didn't have to do that. There's a case where you dive in and you learn that this monumental task you volunteered to do is really doable. You just have to get in the water. I always tell people, you want to be an Olympic swimmer, you got to get in the pool.
Yes, yes, that's
First
true.
step's get in the pool.
Yeah.
You don't get there overnight, but sometimes you find out it's not as hard as you thought. And that's, I think, true with most things. So we take each project as it comes. We try to kind of, summarizing. We started out as a local group, telling the local history, figured out, I don't know, in 20, 40 years, I don't want to say it's run its course. It's still interesting. But how many times would somebody from Havre De Grace come to hear that story?
Right.
You need to make it fresh. You want repeat customers, right? I mean, how many times would someone go to a restaurant if they only served one meal?
Right.
You got to have a menu that changes. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, they got a stale menu. It's a little stale. It's been the same for 40 years.
Yeah.
You want to have new stuff. And so we're no different. New products are the lifeblood of any business. Doesn't matter which one. There's no coincidence that Pepsi and Coke own a water company, own a juice company each, own a energy drink. Why do you think that is if everybody was just going to drink Coke or Pepsi?
Exactly.
Because they figured that they don't do that, their market share only goes one way when you're the market leader, and that's down.
Yeah.
When you stop innovating, you start dying. It's just that simple. I don't care what business you're in. And until you learn that lesson, you'll not be successful. You cannot sit on your laurels. You just cannot rest on them. You got to constantly be reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at right now. The Decoy Museum, we find ourselves needing to reinvent ourselves a little bit, not to abandon our earlier mission and story, because it's still our story to tell. But we use that as a springboard to tell a broader story.
Yeah.
And showcase more things. And the more other things we showcase, the more other things we'll learn about.
Yes.
Because you keep talking to the same local guy, you're going to hear the same local story.
Yeah.
You talk to a guy out of Tullytown, Pennsylvania, you're going to hear stuff
Something
you never
different.
thought of. And now you're going to say, did they do that where I live? Come to find out there's a whole industry of that and you didn't know. I think there's a basic skill that's required to be good at that. but I don't think you have to go to Wharton School to learn it.
Mm-mm.
I think you have to be patient. One of the criticisms, and most people do it in a funny way, but one of the criticisms of me is he loves to talk. But I'll tell you something, I love to listen too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I spent 40 years listening to customers. I'm really good at knowing when to stop talking and start listening. But you do have to know, you have to know when to listen. Because if you really want to know what's going to make you famous, listen to your customer, your target audience.
Yep.
They're going to tell you every time. You got to listen. They will tell you what product to invent.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is listen. And it's up to you to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole lot easier. I mean, the idea is the hard part.
Right.
You have to learn to drive down those blind alleys and recognize when you're there. I've been successful in those kinds of things, and I've tried to bring that to the Decoy Museum. Not everything that we touch works, but you have to have a little persistence and some patience. I'm not very patient.
I'm not
I told you
either.
I was Italian. I'm not very patient. I got the patience of a rattlesnake.
I'm patient sometimes with some things, and then other things I'm not. I chomp at the
I'm
bit.
actually
I'm like,
successful.
all right, come on.
I do selectively. I have all the patience in the world for some things and absolutely none for other things.
Yep. Do you want to share anything about upcoming events or anything like for your 40th year anniversary or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I can share the Decoy Museum. The first week in May for the last 45 years, even though we're only 40 years old, there were 44 years. We just did the 44th. But they've been going on for 45. We had to cancel COVID. Imagine that. So that was 45th year. We've had a decoy show and fundraiser. And the reason they've had more decoy shows than the museum's been around is they figured out these great ideas cost money and they needed to raise money.
Yeah.
And so they started out by building some enthusiasm in town by having this decoy show. So next year will be the 45th. So all of that money is operational money. We take all that money and put it towards operations. We host smaller events. We sponsor those. I hate to call them lectures. They're not really lectures, but they're presentations, question and answer, interactive type discussions with carvers. We don't charge for that. I feel the currency we get back from that is far better than a couple bucks.
Yeah.
We even serve lunch at our cost. But the discussions and the reputation that you gain by hosting those.
Right.
When a man from Iowa comes in and tells you this is the finest museum in the country, you have a tendency to say, whoa. You know, it makes you think of yourself a lot differently than you did before he said that. Like, who would have thought that?
Yeah.
They're a little self-serving for us, too, because it helps us populate the queue of ideas. I sit at those presentations listening for different things than the story. In researching the setup of the whole thing, I already know what he's going to say. So I'm looking for what did the guy in the crowd ask that generated that answer? And who asked that question? And I'm going to follow up with him because there's something interesting about that question. I think he has some experience I should probably know about. So I sit at those things learning that way. We just recently held a fundraising banquet. It's a higher end, $100 a plate kind of banquet where there's auctions, live auctions, silent auctions. It's held at the historic Wellwood. So we picked the venue, which is a historic duck hunting place. Last year we had over 200 people. The event was extremely successful. It raised a lot of money for the museum. So we picked the first Saturday night in December amidst all our counseling that said, you can't have an event that close to Christmas and it'll be successful. Nonsense. Our event was essentially sold out. We do a lot of little smaller events. We do shows. We participate in all the local decoy club events. Each of them has a show in some part of the East Coast. We've gone as far south as North Carolina, as far north as, I do the Jersey show up outside Atlantic City. And we've had some members that go all the way to Long Island. I think we're in search of one more major event to do. Not sure what that is yet. We're entertaining ideas. But
Stay tuned.
I just don't know what it is yet. If you want people to come to something you're doing, it can't be just like the one the guy did last weekend.
Yeah.
So you want something that's unique. Mm-hmm. The biggest project that's out in front of us is this expansion. I told you we were looking at a 12,000 square foot expansion. We do need more space. Can we reevaluate use of current space? Always. Certainly you can. Mm-hmm. Do you want to take an exhibit out of an old timer that's been in here for 40 years to make that space? No.
Yeah.
Because their grandkid's going to come through here one day and wonder, where's Pop? And we don't want to do that.
Right.
We're actually out for bids right now in this project because we're trying to get a real cost. We think, I just made that number. I didn't make it up. It's based on a lot of formulas. Mm-hmm. But the real formula is a contractor willing to come in and build something for you, and he's bid this amount of money. That tells you what it's going to cost. Yeah. And we're in that process. And I suspect what we're trying to do is going to be in that area. Yeah. One of the things that new space will allow us to make the place more interactive. We're not trying to recreate Times Square upstairs, but somewhere between a storyboard-based museum and Times Square is where we want to be. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of electronics out there that can really, they're attention grabbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I did a lot of trade shows in my life, in my career. You only have a couple of seconds to grab someone's attention. Right. So it's got to be something that does it. And it ain't going to be a storyboard. Good. It's not going to be a storyboard. Right. You don't catch that key word in the middle of the 10th paragraph that brought you back. Right. It's just not going to be. It's got to be something. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking of things like, just to give you a little heads up, but thinking of things like a room has surround picture graphics. Yeah. And you plop yourself down for a short-term experience of you're now body booting on the Susquehanna Flat. Oh, cool. And with all the technology, you're going to hear ducks coming, and you're going to hear shotguns go off. Yeah. And you're going to see the ducks coming at you. Yeah. Or maybe almost like those at Universal Studios, where you're immersion movies or whatever. You're only in there for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're not trying to be the Sphere in Las Vegas, for hours. Yeah. And so things like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, rooms that give you that. Another crazy. We hired a master planner to help us think a little bit about things we didn't know about. And that is, you can use holographic technology. I can have R. Madison Mitchell teach you how to carve a decoy through a hologram. Mm-hmm. You can stand there and you think he was standing right there, but he's not. Mm-hmm. And we have his voice. That's awesome. So he can, and with AI, you can generate his voice. But that stuff that's cutting edge. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not stuff that you develop for $50. Yeah. You got to do that. And so that kind of stuff is what we see ourselves trying to do more of. Not abandon where we came from. Right. We're not going to be that other festival that's selling wine and cheese and music in the street. Mm-hmm. I think the right amount of the interesting stuff with the traditional stuff is the recipe for success. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think we covered. I think we did. One of the things I think probably good to end with also is, what's the takeaway for visitors? Visitors should leave this building saying, what a wonderful place, what a wonderful history, and how well it was presented, and it just captured my attention. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming back. Mm-hmm. Because I couldn't begin to hear and see everything you had in here to offer. Because that's how you get a customer come back, It's like having a restaurant, right? The guy has a really good burger, and he says, I'm coming back. I'm going to try that cheesesteak. Yeah. I mean, you got to make it a good experience. So that's what you want your customers. You want them to come back. Yeah. So that was my thought, was what more can I learn? And when they leave, what more can I learn? And then come back with this, I think if you take the time and go through all those touch screens, you will find out very quickly you can't possibly take that all in one day. It took me months to write the content. And I can't imagine, and I knew a lot of it. I can't imagine somebody that's getting it for the first time can't take it in 1 hour.
Right.
And I did just recently see some data. I'm still developing an acceptance rate for how accurate it is, but the average visit to a museum's like, I think I saw 95 minutes. So what's that, hour and a half? So hour and a half's a pretty short period of time when you have 15,000 square feet and a bunch of interactive stuff. I guarantee an hour and a half you couldn't read the touchscreens. When I proofread them, it took me 4 or 5 hours to do them all. And then what's the value of being a member? The value of being a member is a belonging. I mean, what's the value of being a member of the Italian American Businessmen Association? It's you're in a cultural thing you identify with. So so now you're in a museum about decoys and waterfowling history, art, folk art. I mean, there's a number of adjacencies that touch this. And just being a part of that, getting a publication that comes to your home 4 times a year, advertising what's next. Membership is inexpensive. I mean, I think it's $50 to be a member for a year in a decoy museum.
That's not bad.
It's not. What do you do for $50 in today's world?
Right.
You can't even go have lunch a lot of times. I think your members are going to be people who identify with some part of what you're trying to do. They're either waterfowlers, have a history of waterfowling, collectors, maybe makers. That's a small segment is the decoy makers. But people who appreciate art, appreciate folk art, maybe they, folk art itself is a whole thing, right? I mean, it's a whole category of itself.
Or appreciate the history, the Havre De Grace history.
There's
of it
history.
too.
I mean, again, I told you the 4 things the town's known for. Just go to Google, look at that. I mean, they're there. The old Wikipedia. So I don't think I missed anything from your list. I didn't even look at it.
I know.
I studied.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I appreciate it so much. Come to the museum. Check the Decoy Museum out in Havre De Grace. It's a short drive.
Yep, and stay as long as you want. And just remember, you don't have to see it all in one day.
Yep, exactly. All right. HUMA.